tonight. We're actually filming in the PM, in the nighttime, because I have a wonderful guest based over in the UK, and I'd love to introduce you to him. So Dave is a storyteller. He is a documentary filmmaker, and he's turning the camera around to his family. And this is super important because in this particular documentary, he's showcasing his beautiful non-speaking autistic child. And in the storytelling, he's showing what it's like to raise an autistic child, what the challenges that come with it, what the joys that come with it, and everything else in between. So welcome, Dave. I can't wait to speak to you further.
Thank you very much. It's very wonderful to be here, and very wonderful to be able to have the opportunity to speak to your audience about the film I'm making.
Amazing. So can you just tell us and run through just a little bit of a background around the podcast, the film and the documentary, and what it's all about?
Yeah. So I'm a filmmaker from the UK, and I mainly make science-based documentaries, I suppose. And before that, I came from a background of making like music videos and this kind of thing. So more of a like kind of conceptual storytelling and creative storytelling, and then I fell into documentaries, and then I was making films about different things within the world of science. And then when Spike came along, it was in the middle of lockdown, and it felt very, very difficult to get any answers for what we were going through, certainly from kind of like any medical professionals. And we were going out of our minds, because all you read, like the word autism had been brought up, but we didn't have, we waited 2 years for the diagnosis. And we just couldn't really get to speak to anybody. And that you hear things like how early intervention is really important, so it's like, are we doing everything we could be doing? And because I was used to, getting in touch with healthcare professionals all the time through my job, I kind of decided, if I start making a film about this, then perhaps that's going to open some doors. And it did. Within a couple of weeks, we were taking to meet some of the best doctors in the country. And without wanting that to be a special privilege, the idea was that this, whatever we're doing, could then be an important resource for other parents that are going through similar things, and also allowing us to kind of get the best kind of help and care that we can for him. And so that's how it started, really. And that was that was a few years ago. And from that point, we've just carried on kind of documenting like points of his life. We don't want to really overwhelm him with putting a camera in his face all the time. So it is quite nice to see him, grow up through the footage, and just pick kind of, special moments that we want to film. And as far as what the film is, I think that's still kind of finding its own narrative. I think a lot of the time within the work that I do, you'll have a film completely worked out before you start filming it, and that's what you need to be able to do, to be able to sell it to a commissioner, or to be able to pitch it to your boss or whatever. And you'll say, and then you'll prepare a document which is called like a treatment or a deck, which could be a 10-page, very visual document. And looking through that document should feel like watching the film, and it's got everything that's in there. And then just through the nature of documentary, new things will come up whilst you're filming, but you've always got that document as something to go back to remind you of what the film is and what it's about. And this film, as I think I've made a few of those documents now, and they're all quite different. And that's been based on, because I was coming from like a kind of science background, the first iteration of the story was very much like a science story, because I was making a lot of films about the microbiome and gut health, and what we were learning. This is all obviously quite like a massive area of science at the moment, a massive area of research and discovery, just due to the new technologies that have come about in the last 10 years or so. And what we're learning about that, it could be just having a profound effect on the way that we're developing as a species, or whatever, and it has been related to, it has been related to autism, that autistic children could have different microbial signatures in their guts, and that could be affecting the way that their brains are developing. And this, that could be an answer. So I was kind of on on that route with the film, and there are people that are doing treatment that could that's in America. There's a few, maybe some of you've heard about it. There's a few doctors that are doing a treatment called FMT, which is about how we could like refloralize our gut microbiome to and see if that could help with autism and other conditions. And the idea was that potentially we could get Spike on one of those trials, and maybe that will be the film, and it will be a very science-based film, which like I could probably be more articulate and talk a bit better about that kind of thing. But then when I started to show that trailer and that version of the story to certain filmmaking friends, that they were less interested in the sciencey stuff, and they just actually really liked seeing me with Spike and what it's like to be a parent, and what it's like to watch him. You notice how when we're out and about, how people always want to kind of like stare and look at your child, and that can be really annoying. You think, God, like, will everyone just stop looking at me? But I think that this film kind of gives people permission to look, and they don't necessarily mean it in a bad way. And I think there's filmmaking techniques, like putting a little microphone on him and just letting him be himself, and then just being able to observe him and immerse ourselves in his world a little bit, is a really kind of interesting thing to be able to see and enjoy. And then I think that the contrast of perhaps having some of the science, and then there's other science things that we're looking into, and with that more observational, candid, authentic documentary material, could just give the film those moments of light and shade, I suppose, that will fit into a more dynamic story. Sorry if that was waffle.
No, not at all. It gave really good context. I was watching the trailer and I was trying not to cry, because especially when Spike was stimming with the stick, and your voiceover was like, I don't know whether he's doing that because he sees something, or whether he's just doing it because he enjoys it, or is it regulation. And it got me on my heart, because my angel boy is exactly the same, right? And it's like, I wish I could get into his brain and see what he sees, because I don't know what he sees. I don't understand why that stimming is such a powerful force for him. And I really just, I think I wrote you an email. Like, I just wanted to like get through the screen and give you guys a big cuddle, because it's true. Like, it's challenging at times, and you don't understand, and people do stare, and I wish that I could give them that education around autism, but you can't stop in the middle of the street all the time and be like, hey, he's autistic, like, please don't stare. No one's doing that, right? And you don't want to shine a light on that either. But it is difficult when they are stopping and staring or making fun, right? I've seen teenagers walk past and I have had to restrain myself. Dave, I've had to restrain myself from doing something. But it's I hope that these sort of documentaries are a beautiful way to educate the wider public on what it is, what autism looks like, and why it's so important, and how we can educate the people who have no idea what autism is, and also have some understanding about or being able to spot it and be like, okay, he must be autistic. Cool, no problems. Like, let's keep going on with our day, as opposed to, what is going on? I don't understand what's happening there. So in terms of your, I guess, the challenges that you were talking about with filming with Spike, what do you think that those challenges were, and how did you overcome them?
I mean, you said quite a few things there that I've kept thinking, oh yeah, I know what you mean, and that you'd like to, we could potentially pick up on some of those points. But I think challenge-wise, because he doesn't necessarily know, I don't know to what extent he knows that I'm filming him, or whether it's like, you don't know if you've fully got his permission, if you know what I mean. So I think you've just got to be quite tactful in, whether he's, enjoying this, or whether he knows he's being filmed, or so it's just being quite subtle and not overwhelming him with too much filming all the time. So that's why it's good to spread things out. As I said, the radio mic thing was a bit of a revelation, is when I did that, because of just how powerful that footage was when we looked at it and just could hear it. Because even if you're with him and out with him, you can't hear all these noises that he's making, and he is actually making a lot more sense than you realize. You think he's kind of just dottering around going do 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 do, but then like you can kind of hear the noises he's making under his breath, and he's playing in the water, singing "Watering Can Water," and he's actually, and there's some kind of like filmmaking techniques like that that are proving to be, really useful. I've just bought this little camera here, which I'm filming myself with, but it's like a miniature little gimbal camera, and I can really, run around and follow him, and really, get quite close up to him without it being a massive camera in his face, which I've been doing a little bit of recently, which seems to also be working well. And I think, going back to some of the things you were saying there about stim, like he does like stimming, but I don't know whether like how much you let them do that for, because I think that the more he does it, the more he does go into a certain world that will start to wind him up a little bit. And I think that if you can kind of, let him have a bit of time, but then also snap him out of it, seems to be the best, and then try and engage him with some other, like physical activities. These seem to be good for keeping him regulated. And speaking of those other, like I'm just thinking about the things that we do, that I have been filming with him. I think the parenting is so different to anybody else's parenting, which they don't really realize. And those scenes, some of them are quite upsetting, like when you said some people might start, taking the mick, or whatever, or people are looking at you in a supermarket, and if I'm, like if working, dealing with Spike's really difficult at that time, then, like I might get quite fresh with somebody who's kind of like, what are you looking at, mate? You got a problem, like, and those moments kind of do happen. And as again, with the kind of moments of light and shade to tell a dynamic story, I do think that it's important to kind of share some of those frustrations. But then there's also the fun moments where, like for me, like brushing his teeth is such a battle, like it's like a full-on like wrestling match, but he loves it. He thinks it's absolutely great. And I've got to pin in both of his arms down, and he's like, no, 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 and closing, and he won't let me put the toothbrush in anywhere near his mouth. And then, and it's like, what, doesn't he like the taste of toothpaste? But then he'll go to the bathroom, and he'll eat a whole tube of toothpaste. So it's not like he doesn't like the toothpaste, but then, and he's laughing all the way through the whole thing. And then, the next evening I'll go in, and he'll just be sat on his mum's lap, like having his teeth brushed, like a good boy. And so I think that those, you can kind of find, so for him, it's just a joke, and it's just a game, and it's just his way of kind of like playing with me, really. And I think that if you can kind of find those types of stories, so it's not so dense. And I think being a father filmmaker is that's such a, using that kind of unique dynamic to my advantage will be what allows me to give this film something that you won't see from a production company coming in to make a film about autism, because I can recognize things within our daily life that could be dramatized, not or made a story out of, just. And I think that those are the bits that will like resonate with an audience, and then you can get into a bit more science, and then you can kind of have another fun scene, and that will hopefully make the film kind of special in its own way. And Spike's very kind of easy to watch, as you've seen from the trailer. He does have a he does have a kind of like personality, and and I think that I'm finding a way to kind of capture that authentically. Did that answer the question?
Yes, no, yeah, you did great.
Yeah.
And so, how old was Spike when you first started filming, and how old do you think he'll be when you finish?
Ever since I started it, I hoped that the film would be finished in a year. That was the thing. It's like, okay, it's going to be a year in Spike's life, but now it is probably 3 years later, and I'm still envisaging a year from now, I'd imagine. But a lot of that is based on funding. I mean, I can fit making this film into my daily routine and life amongst other work, but I can't do it full time. It's actually the edit that takes most of the time, because with regards to, if I'm filming things whilst we're on a holiday, or whilst we're taking him to see a doctor or whatever, you can kind of fit these days in and around your life quite easily. But sitting down for 3 to 5 months to edit a film unpaid is impossible. So that's where I need to find actual funding, and whether that comes from a broadcaster, which is looking more unlikely. This is probably going to need to be an independent film, which can be better, because it allows the film to be exactly the film it needs to be, rather than something that somebody, some commissioner has decided. They'll always try and fit it into a box that they want to do. Like they'll try and put their stamp on it, which, and fit it into a series about something or another. Whereas I think for it to be a completely authentic and independent, and an independent route would be the best option. So it's going to be just about finding some funding for that, and it may be through like crowdfunding. If I've got the film, if I can film the majority of the footage myself, which I think I can, it's just about finding the funding to get to spend 3 to 5 months editing it. And because I can do that myself, it wouldn't be that much. So let's hope that by this time next year, maybe a little bit earlier. I think it would be great if I could wrap all the filming up by Christmas, and then go into the winter with an edit plan, and then perhaps by April it would be finished.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching it, that's for sure.
Mhm.
The trailer's got me hooked. But how do you think that this film will connect with audiences? Do you think that they will love it? Do you think that they will be emotional? Do you think that, how do you think they're going to take it?
I think from the people that you want something that is broad, and you want the people from the autistic community to appreciate this. Like I said, I felt like I wanted to make something as a resource that for other parents, that are just starting to navigate similar journeys, that this can be something important, for them to watch, to help them find their way. But then also you want it to be broad enough that people outside of that would also appreciate it. And I think that's what I was saying about, how people just want to stare. I think that sometimes they want to stare just because they're intrigued, and yet they see something different that they're not used to seeing. And this film could give them, the permission to be able to have a window into that world. I think some of my favorite documentaries aren't, things that I'm interested in whatsoever, and that's the brilliance of a good film, really. The one that can just like get you totally into something. I mean, there's and what the even there's the first interview that we did with the doctor. Sometimes I watch that back, and I still get I still take a lot from it, like and I think so. I think other people watching that would also feel the same way. I looked up like what films to watch about autism, expecting to see some other documentaries, and a film of drama called What's Eating Gilbert Grape come up. I don't know if you remember that, with Leonardo DiCaprio, when he was and he's playing a character called Arnie, who was autistic, and he was 18. And I actually got quite a lot out of watching that film, because the Arnie character is just so happy, and it reminded me of Spike a lot. And because you don't really know what's he going to be like when he's 18, and I could see that and think, oh, maybe he'll be like that, and that would actually be, a good thing, because that character's happy, So I think films and telling stories are just important ways to help us, navigate our decisions in life. Sometimes, they feel like they're becoming less relevant, because you know, films are like a window into other worlds. And when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, and you'd watch these films and have these windows into these other wonderful worlds, whereas like now there's so many different ways of getting windows into other worlds through, you know, social media and things like that. And perhaps that's why the relevance of films are kind of slipping away a little bit. But I think the relevance of storytelling is been with humanity since the beginning. And I watched a film the other day called I Swear, which is about Tourette's, and I got quite a lot from that film as a parent. And it's a film about somebody who, you know, like starts developing Tourette's syndrome at the age of about 16, and you can really see how the impact of a condition like that has on the family, and how they're constantly feeling like they've in every, you know, when you think your life's going to be one thing. 'Cause so I kind of cried all the way through the film, you know, because it's like, you know, you think your life's going to be one thing, and suddenly it's going to be something completely different, and you're just going around all the time just apologizing and yeah, sorry, 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 and you're not really sure where this is going to go and how you're going to come out the other end and how you're going to live through this. But then, because the film does have such a positive direction towards the end, and I don't want to give it away because I really recommend anybody seeing it, you know, that made me feel like that's how I want to be, you know, and that's how I want to work with this thing. And if there's ever a reason why, you know, stories and films can still be important, then that film's a great example of it.
I watched I Swear.
Mm,
I watched it in chunks because that's the amount of time I had by myself where I could watch, because obviously there's a lot of curse words and I don't really stay up too late. So I watched it in chunks and I probably got three-quarters of the way through it and I just felt broken. Like I was sobbing like a baby, and I just remember like screaming at the TV, like, why is this even happening? Why is this condition even a thing? Like it
mm,
was just torture, and I don't even know how this poor man has navigated life through. And because the worst thing is because it's based on a true story, right? It's not a made up film. And so this idea that someone is navigating these challenges and still has a happy disposition, you know, and I'm like, what? How? Who? And so I look at parents that we have in our community who have children who are non-speaking, who, you know, can't walk or talk or eat or do all these things, and they are some of the happiest parents alive, right?
mm,
And I'm like, you know, this mindset around what does that look like, and how do we manage that as parents? How do we bottle that up, right? And look at life like it's still so beautiful and so sunny, regardless of where our child sits on a spectrum, on the ladder, on life, right? You still have an upbeat way of thinking because he's still alive, he's still breathing, he's still, you know, smelling the flowers and enjoying life. And I think that that is something that I know I definitely struggled with in the beginning, and it was through coaching that I was able to really change my mindset. But you know, raising a child who is non-speaking is an interesting way of being, right? A way to communicate when, especially with my angel boy, is that he can get his needs met, right? I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need to go to the toilet. But then if I ask him a question, hey, can you go and get your socks? It'll just be like, not even hear me. Won't, there's no eye contact. There's no, you know, it won't even register that he, and maybe he has heard me, right? But I can't see any way that he's understood that question. And so there was a very long period of time where I would cry myself to sleep thinking, am I ever going to hear him say, I love you? Right? Is that going to be a phrase that I am ever going to hear from him? And it took me a very long time. He eventually got to the point where he could say, I love him, that he loves me, sorry. And I don't take that for granted, right? Every time I hear it, I pinch myself because I think that there was a time there that that was not possible. And I wanted to ask you, what was your, and how has your, I guess, your perception, your mindset, what has that been like raising Spike being non-speaking? What has that been like? Especially what has it been like for your wife?
mm. Um, it's I mean, it's obviously not been easy at all. Look, we're really lucky in the fact of how happy he is, which is because like you can still find a way to have a happy time with Spike, but things can get too much and too overwhelming. Like we are living separately at the moment, and we kind of take it in turns a little bit. And without those breaks, it just would be too much, so like I think if we can kind of work out a way that we say yeah, we have a weekend together, she has a weekend off, I have a weekend off, it means that I can have a really quality weekend with Spike and do some things myself, and I'll really put a lot of effort into focusing on that being the best time for us. And then you can have your weekend off and do like, even if you just want to lie in bed all day and watch Netflix or whatever, that's like might be something you just really need. And then you can do something nice together. And I think that it's not like it just happens like once every 3 weeks, but it just, as long as you can kind of divide your time and give each other breaks, that's been really, really useful. And I think, yeah, you just can't. It's really hard for me to hear. Like I struggle to listen to friends talking about their children. Like like when I do have my weekends off away with friends and they want to talk to me about Spike, I don't really want to talk, about Spike. Like this film, and there's other times when I do and really want to kind of talk about it, but I just think that I do need a total kind of escape from it, and that's still difficult. Like even yeah, when we've been at schools and when it was like his first day at school, and we didn't really know to what extent he would be fitting. We didn't know if the teachers were just going to call us up halfway through the day and say, "You've got to come and pick him up because we can't like deal with this." And then there was like another little girl who had come up to me with a book and asked me to read her a story, and then I started crying in the classroom. And I think that those things, are always going to kind of, just because that's not something that you're used to happening. And I don't know what you were saying there, but it was making me think of, and I think that we're both very, very, patient people, like, and we've got, and there's a lot of people that aren't. And I don't know for when you see people shouting at their kids out in the street, or, it's like, what would you be like in the situation I'm in? Because I remember hearing a neighbor who was and his daughter was and this was like a year or so ago, and he must have had a daughter of a similar age to Spike, about 7 years old, and she was crying and saying, "But Daddy, I just want a cuddle." And he's like, "Shut up, you're being stupid. You're being stupid." And she's like, "But I just want a cuddle." And I was just, and it's like I was kind of crying because the idea of Spike asking me for a cuddle would mean the absolute world to me. And what would that guy be like if he was having to look after Spike, like where every second something's getting poured on the floor or whatever, so I don't know how I linked that story there, but I think that's something that you were saying earlier just made me think of it.
Yeah, it's true. But like you think
Yeah.
about hugs, right, as being
Mm,
regulation, right?
mm,
So you've got a child here who needs a hug in order to regulate their system so that they can feel okay again. The difference is, as an adult, what we're doing is crack open the beer, drink the bottle of wine, smoke the joint, smoke the cigarette, watch the porn, buy the stuff off social media. That's your regulation. And no one's telling you you can't do it. Like if I went up to somebody, right, and said, you can't have your bottle of wine tonight, they'd probably hit me with the bottle, right? They'd cuss
mm,
me out and tell me to get out and you can go and bugger off. The problem here is that children don't understand regulation. And so, therefore, they look to us as big people to give them that regulation. And that's why it's
mm,
so difficult, because sometimes parents don't have the capacity to be able to co regulate with their children because they're so burnt out, right? So,
mm,
this is why we look at other supplementation to be able to cope, right? Prescription meds, marijuana, whatever, it doesn't matter.
mm,
And so a perfect example is after the diagnosis, Dave, I was a pretty big drinker. Like I would probably have a bottle of wine over 2 nights pretty much all the time, right? It'd be 5 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Like, let's pour this wine, because people would stare as soon as my angel boy would start stimming, and he would do a lot of vocal stimming. And it got to the point where I got to the point where I probably could finish off a bottle of wine in one night, and I'd wake up the next morning feeling a-okay, no problems whatsoever. And somebody said to me, do you know that if you do that and you wake up the next day and you feel fine, you've probably got a predisposition to being an alcoholic? And I was like, pump the brakes, I'm done.
Mm.
And so it's probably been about 4 years now since I've had alcohol. And there's times where I'm like, oh, I could go for a drink right now. And I'm like, but why do I feel like that? There's always an underlying cause as to like why we're seeking the outside source. And so for parents, if we can just eliminate that and we can look at why we do those things, we can help to be able to regulate ourselves, but then help regulate our own children. And it's hard to do. It's not easy, right? It's not easy, but it's something that I wish more parents understood the massive factor that is this co-regulation with a substance or an alcohol or something, whatever it is. And it can be your poison. It really can. And there's plenty of people out there that are still using it on a daily basis and they don't see anything wrong with it. So it can be a really tricky thing to manage. So I would want to know what's going on with that dad next door, right? What's happening with you so that you can address what's going on with the child.
Yeah, I know. I mean, he's moved out now. I just don't think he was a very nice guy. But yeah, but maybe, yeah, hopefully that little girl had a really loving mother who gave her a cuddle when she wanted one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess you do just see a lot of that and wonder what people would be like. And I think the film as well is just an opportunity for me to share what we're going through, just so because that will be, helpful for us just to let you know what it's like. Yeah, big, not just all the, yeah, but obviously, as I say, constant like peppering the difficult things with the joys as well, so people can understand it. But it's difficult to kind of, tell people the full truth of what you're feeling all the time.
Absolutely.
Especially if those weekends are, like you go and see your mates are so precious as a kind of moment of escape. I don't want to start. That's where I don't want to kind of bring everybody down with saying, "Oh, Spike's been doing this and that and the other," and it's really difficult to, because it's just like I don't want to talk about Spike, and I certainly don't want to talk about your kids. Let's just talk about the good old days. Like that sounds like really that's not all the time. Like but that's
It is. It's hard to hear other
mm,
parents talking about how their kid is doing so well.
yeah.
It's soul crushing when
Mm,
their child is moving along in leaps and bounds, and your kid is still back here, and
mm,
they're not going as fast as you would like, or not moving at all, really, in some
mm.
cases, and you just feel stuck, and you feel like you can't move forward. So the documentary is so important to highlight that even though we think that we might be stuck, we're actually moving, but we're just moving slower than everybody else, right? And I think it's brilliant that you're putting this together, because there needs to be more. Anything that we can bring more education, more light, more experience and exposure to autism is hugely important. And I hope that the world embraces it as much as I know I will, and brings a community together to understand what it's like and what it means, and how truly important it is. So thank you so much for bringing it to light.
Yeah, thank you for showing an interest in it. And it's honestly it's a real joy to be making. I think the one thing that I feel like, when you want to do your best for your child, as we all do, that's is the thing that makes me feel like I'm doing my best. This is the thing that I can do. Because yeah, I do have the potential to, and I hope the film discovers something that, we didn't know before, like that's the hope really. That I can, use this, turn the same as the film, I swear, like to turn your difficulty into what your purpose is in life. And I think with all the people that I've met in the autistic, they've all transitioned from one area of healthcare into a different one because they've got an autistic child. And I think that for a lot of people, yeah, the autism kind of uh, industries and all their different forms, I suppose, of it's all people that are generally parents that have changed from one type of education to a different one, or from one type of healthcare, to another one, or journalism, or whatever they do. I think that people have it's been a calling card for people to want to help, yeah, to work out the best way to kind of help their children and help others that are struggling.
And so where do people find you? How do they keep in touch with you and know when or how the documentary is going, or when it's going to be coming out? How do they find you?
I've always been terrible at social media, and because I suppose I was it in the world of television that was before that came about, it wasn't like I was kind of like purposely snobby about it. It was just it felt too similar to work to be kind of getting into it. And so I don't quite have the following I could have potentially with the work, like I didn't really do I was just making TV programs for broadcast and didn't really do YouTube and didn't really do Instagram so much. So, but that's something that it feels really good to be doing now with this project. So we did just start an Instagram page not very long ago, and seeing that felt like, oh, this is actually social media that's being used for a really good thing. Because now I've got two accounts, and I hated Instagram before. I was like, why are people looking at this? It's doing is preying on your weaknesses. I'm just looking at people cutting up meat. Like, why this is like, why am I looking at that? And or just people trying to kind of sell me stuff, and I didn't get it. But then, like, when we started the Instagram for the Spike film, you're just seeing lots of it, and you realize that they're actually the community, or the things that I thought I was going to be, the things that I might be able to bring to light through this film, it really does exist quite heavily on social media, and it feels like that's for exactly what you're doing. This is actually social media being put to a really good use. So we've got an Instagram page which is just titled like Spike_documentary, and that's pretty much the only thing we've got going on. Like, we haven't done a Facebook page yet, but I'm just constantly just putting up little video clips as we film things, and then I think that will probably be the main point of contacts to find out how the film's developing. And yeah, it would be I do, as I say, I'm not much of a social media so the more followers that which it seems to be this kind of dark art of like this new currency in life is however many kind of followers you've got. And in it, I don't really want to be that kind of desperate for a person that's saying, yeah, hit like and subscribe, but that seems to be what you're supposed to do to build the community that we need to make this film everything it can be, I suppose.
And I think people just want to stay, in contact. They want to see what's going on. They form an attachment to Spike, and they form a loving bond, even though they've never met him, right? That you sort of want to know, well, what's happening with the documentary? What's happening next? Where are you now? Like, what's going on? And I think that it's a beautiful way to show parents hope and the light at the end of the tunnel, and that things do get better, and how we can improve and how we can do better for our kids. Because our Lord knows there are people getting a diagnosis for their child right now as we speak. There is a person in a pediatrician's office getting a diagnosis of autism for their child, and then them thinking, oh my God, I don't know what to do, and my life feels like it's in the toilet, and I just am gonna grieve and feel the loss of what's going on. So having something to be able to show them that isn't just Rain Man, right? Like, that's all I'm assuming, I don't begrudge me, but I'm assuming that we're in the same sort of age bracket. But like, that was the only sort of autistic representation that we had back in the 80s. Even back in the 90s, or maybe I guess we had Leonardo DiCaprio playing that role in what was the movie again? Sorry, I forgot.
What's Eating Gilbert Grape?
That's right. So
I'd recommend people go watch it again. It's beautiful.
I think if I watched it, I reckon I'd probably bawl my eyes out again. So, but I think it's important that we can share that and form that bond right? And be rooting for Spike to be like, yes, you know, he's going to make it to the finish line, and yes, we're going to get there, and there is going to be a positive outcome. But if you're getting that diagnosis, it feels bleak, and you don't really know what's out there. So having movies to fall back onto, or something to watch that sort of holds you in a space that makes you feel okay, right? That we're going to get through. I think that's really important.
A lot of people said to us, you know, when we were going through getting the diagnosis, that, oh, you're so lucky because people have never known more about the condition and this, that, and the other, which is true. But at the same time, you know, the broadness of the diagnosis, you know, that it can cover so many different types of versions of the condition, you know, it means you still really don't know what that means. And, you know, when there's no idea of what, you know, could be causing it, or, you know, like how best to treat it or live with, you know, like that, there's still so many kind of unknowns as well. And these things all do seem to be changing quite quickly. Like, I'd hope that as well, the film can be quite esoteric and maybe, you know, question other things about, you know, existence and consciousness. And, you know, like by seeing like world through Spike's eyes, we really think about how we, you know, we interpret it through our own heads and whatever. And there has been such a rise in the symptoms, I think, of the condition, you know, and that there must be, you know, some answers out there for why that is.
Yeah, there's so many comorbidities, right, that come with autism. So it's so hard to be like, and that's why they often say, once you've met one autistic child, you've met one autistic child. Like, it's no two are going to be the same. And so that's why it's so much harder to then put a plan in place and figure out the best supports, because it's not A plus B equals C situation. It doesn't work like that. So, you know, every situation is going to be different, which means every support is going to be different, which means that every therapy is going to be different. And how does that work for every child? And, you know, it's a never-ending rabbit hole that we can really keep going down. But as long as parents are looking after themselves, first and foremost, that is the only way that we can be able to manage this. Because if you've got mum and dad who are just hanging on by a thread, and I love the fact that you guys are having that weekend, I think that is so paramount, because we're exhausted, right? Parents are absolutely depleted of every single ounce of energy that they've got, right? And it's refreshing to see marriages who are super strong, but placing boundaries that go, you know what, we need this in order to be able to operate. This is what's going to work for us. And as soon as you get a diagnosis of anything, all rules are out the door, right? What works for you and your family should be exactly that, right? We're not trying to be the perfect all American, all UK, all Australian family. Like, we don't care, right? Whatever works, however you're going to survive and thrive is going to be the biggest challenge. Not biggest challenge, the biggest, I guess, moving the needle, and the biggest point of how we can really move forward and best support our family. But before we wrap up, Dave, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I don't know. Yeah, I think that if people are watching, and yeah, I mean, feel free to kind of get in touch with your stories, because I don't really know. The film is finding its own direction in quite a natural way, and whether or not, you know, maybe part of the journey of the film might be going on a little bit of a world tour with Spike, you know, and meeting some people in America, meeting some people in Australia, meeting, you know, like, and just getting a sense of how the how people are working out ways of living with the condition around the world, you know, might be part of the narrative. So anything anybody's got that they think might be interesting to share, then please do get in touch, I guess.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Dave. I so appreciate you. Thank you for making this documentary, and I cannot wait to see it. So okay. I'll see you soon.
Wonderful. Great to chat. Take it easy.
Take it easy. See you later.